Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you to the other panelists. It's exciting to be here in Dubai at the Retail Summit. You know, as mentioned, we're going to talk about kind of agility at scale, really the focus on the store and just in-store transformation. So, you know, from our perspective at JumpMind and what we hear from retailers, we often hear store transformation and transformational projects are really challenging. When you have a lot of stores, a lot of devices, a lot of associates to train, it's challenging. But we also know, and we've heard about it in a few of the prior sessions today, that stores have never been more important, and the percentage of transactions or orders or revenue being done is being done through the store. I mean, digital is important, of course, but everything, the largest percentage is really still going through the store. And kind of, I'll give you a quick example. One of our customers, Petco, very large brand in the US with about 1,500 stores, they approach transformation in kind of an evolutionary way, where they look to replace components, solve business challenges, and then ultimately go through a full suite replacement. So I'll start with you, Vinay, if I may. So, how has Landmark approached kind of the move away from legacy technology in store?
Afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here with a great panel and to share the knowledge with you. Whether it's Landmark or any other retailer, I don't think we were in any different position than any other retailer in Europe or in the Middle East, to be honest. I think just to put it in the context, we need to look at it as the world before COVID. Pretty much everybody were gearing up for e-commerce ramp up, and all the investment and focus was in building e-commerce capabilities when you had a store. We went into COVID era, and then the COVID period sort of focused more on e-com, and then we sort of slowed down the investment and the focus on improving the stores. And then what that gave everybody, be it the Tesco's of the world or the Walmarts or Targets in the Europe or the US or us, is customer expectations change consistently, frequently, and so quickly that we realized that we need to be agile. And agility for us means how do we introduce more customer experiences and things that we could do differently within the stores, right? And one thing that comes in the way of doing that in terms of agility and not having the agility is legacy system. And if you look back in the last 10 years, pretty much all the retailers focused on a monolithic architecture or these systems, which they bought once, implemented it, and assumed, nothing is going to change, and the customer experience and the behavior isn't going to change, right? There was a lot of talk about omnichannel, and then there was focus on improving the experiences. But then as we went into the COVID kind of a time frame, that seemed to have got diluted. So for us, it's been a journey. We are modernizing our tech stack as well as looking at how can we give the right experiences for our customers in a unified manner, right? We have a good e-commerce proposition. We have stores. We need to sort of get to the point where it becomes seamless for customers to understand what the brand is, what the offer is, and to have a unified experience across online and offline. And we don't believe, by the way, the brick and mortar is dead, right? So going into the COVID era, everybody was saying, the brick and mortar in the stores are not growing, it's dead, and we shouldn't focus on it. And we didn't take that approach. So for us, the journey has been that we knew, and we are actively looking at modernizing and improving our tech stack and the experience in the store. But one thing we have learned on the way is it's not easy to change the store systems, right? There's a lot of challenges. If anybody thinks it's easy to sort of modernize the store and bring in the relevant experiences in the store, it is a challenging and daunting task. Purely from a technology point of view, you can't just buy one package, deploy it in a store, and expect that is going to solve the problem, right? So if you look back in the last few years, we've been investing heavily in terms of making sure our network is stable. We have a lot of stores in KSA, for example. If you've driven down Jeddah, you will see there's a lot of construction activity that's going on. There's a lot of trenches being dug out, and then you will not have internet connectivity, for example, right? So the key thing for us has been that we focus on getting the infrastructure, be it in terms of network architecture, get the SD-WAN kind of a setup going, replace the hardware, the operating system, and then get ready to actually transform the applications and integrate that with be it a customer data platform, be it the e-commerce, and get to the point where we can give that seamless customer experience. So it's been a journey. We've not completed that yet. And it's a journey that we will go through for the next 12 to 18 months to get to the point where it becomes effective. Yep.
Makes sense. Yeah. So why don't we shoot over to Dan, chat a little bit about what you're doing with Hackett, because I think you're doing some modernization around your loyalty platform and how it affects kind of your stores and your store environment.
Indeed, and I would certainly concur with Vinay's points there that bricks and mortar is certainly not dead, and we've seen a lot on the earlier panels that digital transformation is fundamentally important. For Hackett, we continue on that journey, but customer loyalty has become the focus, the main focus of that. And what we wanted to do was create our ultimate goal of a platform that is all-encompassing. But we didn't want it to be promotionally driven. So we looked at our network and thought, okay, how can we make this different? And we wanted to really focus on our affiliates and our network and make a platform that was about experiences. Equally putting the power, if you like, in the hands of the employee. So each employee has its own handheld device, and they can track that customer throughout their whole journey. So whether that's that they're just coming in to browse or to buy, we can see the history of each customer, and we can see what they like to buy, what colors they like to buy, what sizes they bought historically. What that allows us to do is have a more personalized approach with the customer and tailor that.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the whole idea of just getting a device into the associate's hands can just change the dynamic of everything you're doing inside of your retail operation.
And it's changed the customer journey. I mean, that's starting at either at the point of purchase or at the point of arrival. So we can call up the history, and it changes the whole experience.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, Arun, if we want to go to you next, I think, grocery, obviously a different vertical than maybe Vinay's speaking about and Dan just did a moment ago. You have a different challenge, I think, right? When we chatted before, your stores are the primary fulfillment center for your online e-commerce, type of orders. So, so how do you guys look at leveraging technology to optimize and, ultimately differentiate inside of the store environment?
Yeah, listen. So we are looking at technology in the store to address three users, right? So obviously, one is the consumer. And there's a whole host of initiatives across really solving two problems. One is, how do we make the whole shopping experience as fast as possible? So that's when the self-checkout, scan and go, face pay, all of that technologies kick in. And the second piece is, how do we help them find the right products, the categories in an efficient way? Whether it's a deal, whether it's, how can we make them feel happy and excited that they've accomplished something that is, a surprise. So that's where, we use some notifications, personalization, to give them cues saying, hey, you bought these products last time, and now we have some kind of promotion that's available in AL20. So there's a whole bunch of initiatives that's going on there. The second user group really is the store staff. The store staff, so we have a dedicated app just for the store staff. And we measure, track NPS for these users, really trying to address a range of use cases to solve for their productivity, giving them alerts on the stock that is replenished, that needs to be coming in, products that are getting closer to expiry date, all of those things, right? Because we believe that, for the right consumer experience, this team needs to be extremely productive, right? So that's use case number two. And finally, to your point, it is the e-commerce business. So this is new, and we felt that it makes sense to leverage the store. E-commerce is a low-margin business, so it really makes sense to leverage the space, the locations, the staff, the inventory that's there. So for us, here is a group of users who we call as the pickers. Okay, so the pickers is basically as soon as an order gets placed, so this person has a clock running, and we have, as some of you would know, we have a 60-minute quick commerce delivery. So how do we get this picker to be as fast and as efficient as possible from the time of order receipt to the time the product is handed over to the last mile team? So there's a whole range of software, incentives that going into this. So that's the way we think about it. But It's very much a work in progress journey, but that's how we think about in-store.
Yeah, super interesting. Vishal, if we'll go to you next, if you want to chat a little bit about what you all are doing at GMG Group and just overall in-store transformation. As I understand it, there's been kind of a platform put in place around the back end. If you want to talk to the audience a little more about that.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for having me here and being part of this panel. We are present in 12 countries and we are in multiple categories. So the biggest challenge, as Vinay articulated, that with any company would be how do we build scale? Okay, and it's a continuous thing. How do we build scale? How do we manage that scale? And how do we build multiple different customer experiences for different markets that we operate in? So the approach that at GMG, what we have taken is very, very simple. We need to go platform-centric and capability-centric. What I mean by that is, if we are operating in grocery business, we have a pharmacy business, we have sports, lifestyle business, and we are present in 12 countries. I need to have the same transaction system working as a platform across and managing different nuances across all 12 plus countries. Because that helps us enter into more markets very easily. Okay? But along with that, I need to have my ERP system and the entire system of record and my single view of enterprise across different. So we've embarked this journey some time back, and I'm glad to share that across 12 countries, we have a platform for entire transaction system. We have a platform for managing our entire enterprise data, and so on and so forth. So it's a Lego block. So today we have a CRM system which is rolled out in one business unit and another business unit, and we are rolling it out everywhere so that we do not have to, because end of the day, we need to be very sensitive about the customer data and so on and so forth. So if we follow this platform approach, we are basically then making it very easy from the architecture perspective, from vendor management perspective, and the internal capability management perspective, that how do we handle this complexity across the group. So we are on that path, and it is showing good results because we are able to scale and enter into newer markets as a company because of this approach that we have followed.
Yeah, it makes sense. As you look to continue to grow, new brands that you bring on, new geographies, obviously having a platform to be able to do that quickly is this whole idea of agility at scale. How can I move fast, but at the scale required for my business?
Absolutely. And then on top of that, we have this complexity because we represent so many brands that a brand A will say, I want this kind of an experience in my store, and this is my global loyalty program or a membership program. And this needs to be rolled out in UAE and XYZ countries. It sits on top. So it becomes very easy for us to integrate and have even the IT security layer managing those elements on top of it. So it comes with its other advantages very easily.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. So let's switch gears for a minute. So, we talk about the in-store technology a little bit, and then really what are we trying to affect with in-store technology? Two things: the customer, ultimately the experience, and also just the way we communicate with our associates and the way that our associates communicate with our customers. Let's take the customer side first. So I'll give a quick example. So American Eagle is a brand of ours that I think was mentioned. And they're hyper-focused on personalization, as you can imagine. And I know a lot of our brands represented on stage are as well. So they do one-on-one appointments. So they leverage JumpMind, and they do one-on-one appointments. And they've found that customer lifetime value and basket size both increase by having this connection with an associate in store. So let's start with you, Dan. Very high-touch, kind of fashion business that you're in. I've got to believe customer lifetime value is part of every conversation you all are having as you expand and just about your existing stores and the footprint of those sorts of things. So how is your team approaching it? I mean, you've chatted a bit about loyalty a moment ago. and I think you have a plan for how you communicate loyalty and those sorts of things and really focus on relevance with your customers, if you want to chat about that.
Indeed. The stage 2 of the loyalty program, if you like, is what we call balancing the 2 R's. So often, and a lot of the panels earlier spoke about reach. Now, reach, of course, is fundamentally important, but often it's overlooked for relevance. So by personalization of that communication tool, you can be more relevant to the customer. So when you've got a breadth of line, like any fashion business, can you ensure that your communications, and most brands will inevitably do 2 communications a week, how can you ensure that you're getting the best value of those 2 points of communication a week, and how relevant is it to the customer? And often the metric used would be, okay, we've reached X amount of customers, and the unsubscribe rate was low. So of course the message landed well. But often we're not looking at how relevant it was to the customer and what was the transaction value thereafter. So by our segmentation, we can see that actually if we personalize the message more, you just mentioned there about American Eagle. So some of our comms are actually coming from the store manager or the sales assistant in some cases, really to ensure the customer has that connection and maintains that connection.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I was speaking with a brand last week. We had our own kind of brand meeting with all of our customers. And we're talking about next best action, and ensuring that you tie next best action into all channels, not just digital communication, but what is the store doing with that? How is e-commerce leveraging it? To your point, these messages can get lost in the list of so many messages that we all get. As we're sitting here, we're all getting emails that we're getting pinged with. You're going to grab your phone. It's like delete, delete, delete if it doesn't have relevance to you and what you'd expect. So it makes a lot of sense. So with that, let's shift to Vinay and chat a little bit about Landmark Group. So you have a challenge, and your company has a challenge of a wide variety, right? You have company-owned, wholly-owned brands from furnitures to baby to fast fashion. So how do you all approach kind of the customer experience and the customer journey from that perspective?
So we have one of the largest loyalty programs called Shukran. I think most of you probably are members of it. We use that to understand the customer behavior and also preferences, right? So I think loyalty programs are typically the ones I think all retailers tap into to understand the intent on the purchase patterns, et cetera. So there's always a challenge in terms of correlating a purchase and a loyalty with one brand with the purchase intent or what the customer wants to do with the other brand. The challenge stems from the fact that we have different systems don't talk to each other, the data is not accurate, data is not consolidated. So I wouldn't say we have a perfect way of dealing with it, but we have ways to overcome those challenges, right? So I think the combination of things at play here, one is understanding and capturing the customer information at the till is always a challenge. One of the things that makes it even more challenging going forward is the PDPL law, the KSA privacy data protection laws, and the GDPR equivalent that's coming in the region is going to be sort of touching all the countries in GCC, right? So we've had to start thinking about how do we make changes to our store touch points so that we capture the consent from the customers. How do we use that consent to then make recommendations? How do we make the notification to the customers to say, hey, you purchased this. You've given us the consent to talk to you about a new offer, right? And then how do we then translate that purchase that happens offline onto online and vice versa, right? So we're taking that multifold approach, even with some of the challenges that we have with systems and regulations that are coming our way. This is where the agility and at scale comes in, right? So things are changing so fast, and the customers are demanding value, and there are so many constraints. How do we make sure that we keep reacting to it and also proactively planning for things that are going to come our way, right? And that's been the prioritization problem that we had to deal with to make sure that we're delivering here and now, but also anticipating some of the challenges coming in. And how do we marry that data with loyalty as well as regulation?
Yeah, super interesting. Vishal, so for you, and I noticed you're wearing a Nike shirt underneath your blazer. So you obviously represent Nike. Your company represents Nike among other kind of global brands. So when you look at the customer and the customer experience, you obviously have mandated experiences from Nike specifically, but you also have a desire to personalize the experience for the way your team looks at it, and just the localized differences of being in the GCC versus some other areas. So how does your team look at that? Or
It's a great question, and I'll unpack it in a different manner. See, and I want to build on what he mentioned. The challenge with most of the companies which are in multi-category, multi-brand kind of a fashion is more or less same. What we are trying to do is know your customer, know your product, know your inventory. It's very, very important. And my personal belief is latency is a new outage. I'm giving a term. Because imagine you are trying a shoe and a color is blue. Maybe it's a fancy product which is just launched, and then you want a green one, and you want to try another color and something else. And there is a rush in the store. And the guy is very impatient, and he is going to spend like 800 dirhams or whatever amount. And if you're not able to answer his question whether you have the same color, a different color in the same size in the store, there and then, you have lost the customer. Okay? So latency is not just the e-com term, it's even in the store. Okay? So, because people are deciding very fast, and many a times it's an impulse purchase. And it's also like you are so much influenced by social media or whatever. And this happens across not just Nike, with many, many brands.
Sure.
Yeah. So you have to address. So we have a runner. It's a very simple thing. We have a runner app in the store associate. He spoke about giving the technology in the hands of store associates, where you empower them to take an action there and then. You just need to scan the barcode, and it tells you how many shoes of that size is available, which all variants, color variants are available. And if that's not available, maybe something else fancy is available. Okay? So it happens live. So it's just one example. So primarily, it is around these know your customer. And then brand has an aspiration that if I have an operation in UAE or Kuwait or different countries, I'm going to bring my global membership program in the region. And that need to have the same experience as you have in US or Europe or in Singapore or elsewhere. So you have to make sure that you not just meet that global expectation, but also the expectations of the local markets. Okay, so because you have people with so many different language, preferences here, and you need to have store staff also should be aware of such global membership programs and things like that, because there is a running event that is going to happen. So if you're a Nike membership member, then you need to be aware what's happening, and the store guys need to communicate that if they know that you are a global Nike member, So, because then the conversation is not about transaction. Then the conversation is about the brand relationship.
Yeah.
So that's how. Then that's where the magic happens. I think that's where we are working on. We are not yet there, but we are working hard.
Yeah. Arun, anything to add from your perspective on how you guys look at the customer and the customer experience before we move to associates?
No, I think the team covered it. The panel covered the points, right? Look, for grocery, it's a little bit different, right? Because what is a great customer experience changes a little bit based on the different industries that you're in. For grocery, the fundamentals really matter. The quality of your fresh matters. How efficient is the checkout matters. How quick is your delivery matters. The packaging matters. So those still constitute, I think, 80–90% of what makes a good consumer experience. So for us, it's really making sure that we continually push the standards in each of those basic parameters And that's the way we think about it. And obviously, as the rest of the panel mentioned, we do our CRM, we do our outreach with our customers. We find WhatsApp as a very powerful channel. But you need to really respect the consumer because they respond very well in case you want to substitute an item or whatever it is. But you can't treat it like your email marketing, right? Because then you're just going to lose that credibility. So these are also things that we're figuring it out. I think cross-selling, also making promotions visible, saying that, hey, you bought these particular products, understanding consumers' elasticity, giving specific promotions, saying that, let's say that you're buying weekly at an average price of, let's say, 150 dirhams, and Vinay is doing that at about 300 dirhams. So for him, the incentive to trade up is going to be very different to yours, and the product that we offer him is going to be very different to yours, right? So those are some of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mention the fundamentals, and it's like, in all kind of verticals, the fundamentals are the key. Fundamentals in grocery might be different than fashion, but it's getting the fundamentals right so that, Dan, to your point, that you have relevance with your messaging, and if you don't have those fundamentals down, it's not possible. Let's shift gears to kind of the associate and the associate experience. So, as a software provider of store technology, I always look at our customer, ultimate customer, as the associate, right? And if I help provide a great associate experience, they in turn will hopefully provide an even better customer experience. And just a quick example there, and I think Build-A-Bear is actually speaking tomorrow, but Build-A-Bear is a customer of ours, and they have a very experiential, and you mentioned experiential earlier, but in a very experiential approach to how they sell, right? You're building a bear. My son built a T-Rex doing this a couple months ago, and there's a whole thing that you go through, and then checkout is this very unfulfilled experience. So their kind of mindset was, how do we get mobility into this? How do we make it as fulfilling as the rest of, or at least as it can be, to the rest of the journey? So, Arun, you mentioned it earlier. I don't know if you want to add to it a little bit, but you talked a little bit about NPS of your associates and just the associate experience, which I found super interesting. So, can you elaborate a little bit more on how you guys look at that?
Yeah. So, as I said, I think there are. So, what do we expect from the store associates, right? So, we expect a range of basics. So I think one is the on-shelf availability. So that's a metric that we track obsessively because an average store has about 8,000 to 9,000 SKUs. So anytime the availability is less, then you potentially lose sales, right? So making sure that on-shelf availability is in the high 90s is a very, very important parameter for revenue. And this is something that is, that we track and support the store staff on, right? So giving alerts for particular suppliers, products based on their sell-through, so we use AI for that. Based on this velocity of sale, you're going to likely run out of stock tomorrow. And for that supplier, you need to act now. For a different supplier, you can wait another 2 hours or the next day because the service levels are also different. Sure. The supply chains are also different. So that's a very, very important, let's say, tool that we use the SMAP application for. The other one is also the staff utilization, okay? One of the things that we're trying to do is, can a stocker play the role of a picker for e-commerce, right? So we're obviously trying to, I don't have an answer yet, but because the hypothesis is these skills can be trained and the same person could do them with a high level of productivity. I can't confirm that yet. It's something that we're piloting. And this should effectively help us improve our staff productivity. So the app also helps you as a manager to assign, saying that this person is going to be a stalker for 3 hours in a day, and for another 3 hours he's going to be a picker. And how do you measure that productivity, and how do you do that, right? So so really, I think this is still evolving for us. We have a panel of about 50 to 60 store staff that we regularly engage with. Also, that sales incentives is very, very important. We have awards and recognition. So, who's been the, which category manager in the store has performed the best, which category is selling the best, which has the lowest or the highest, on-shelf availability. So, a bunch of those things, are tracked, and just really a vehicle to connect with them, keep them updated. The challenge is often, a little bit on the technology side, so making sure that this is available across a variety of Android applications and versions over several years, right? So, extremely useful, and we're still very much early in the journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really ultimately about investing in your associates, right? I was at a brand summit for the Vitamin Shop in Dallas, and they brought all their managers, district managers, and it was all about education. They sell vitamins. Like, if I'm not educated and you come in, how am I supposed to sell you the right thing? How am I supposed to help you? Any different than someone could do just by going on Amazon and just ordering it. So if you're gonna, you need to provide a differentiated experience in lots of situations, or in nearly every situation. So Vinay, I'll flip to you. You and I have spoken about the associate experience, and it being a differentiator. Can you share a little bit about how you all look at simplification for the associate and what you're doing to kind of make not only retention better for your associates, but also just ultimately kind of the productivity you see from your associates?
Yeah, I think Vishal and Arun kind of touched upon a few things there, right? One is about productivity improvement, right? And then if you focus on productivity, the question really boils down to, if you have a new joiner, how quickly can they come up to speed, and can they start serving the customer with all the relevant knowledge that they need to have to share with the customer, right? So, or the second example which Vishal was giving was a runner app, right? So all stores and all retailers have it, which is, you're trying on a shoe, I need to find another shoe. Would you have the same person go and check in the back room, or would I page somebody to go check it, or I have an app to make sure that they have it, right? So it all boils down to the experience and the brand perception that we want to grow, build, and develop with the customer, right? So it varies from store to store. The way we approach it would be completely different to what Dan and high fashion would do versus what you would experience in Shoe Mart store or Splash is different, right? So I think our focus has always been, how do we build applications and drive the change management in the store level, so that we actually train the store staff to use the technology, and we develop technology in a way that they become educated. It's easy for them to use it. It's quicker for them to get up to speed on it. And then they can use that tool, technology, and the process to actually serve the customer, right? That's been our approach.
Yeah, it makes sense. And when you bring on seasonal staff, you hire lots of associates over time. It's like the speed to get them up to speed ultimately, right? They can't go through a 6-week-long course to figure this stuff out. It's like, take an iPad and go figure it out. Grab a handheld device and get on the floor. You'll be able to do that quickly. You all have taken, Dan, at Hackett, kind of an approach to internal communication that maybe you can chat to the audience about.
I think it's interesting that regardless of the type of business, we're all looking to heighten that level of engagement. And I think that's become fundamentally important for employee level. Some of the learnings that we've had, and we were far from perfect, but we could acknowledge quite quickly that perhaps the information flow was not there right down to store associate level. And by investing in a platform that allowed those communications to be clearer, we felt it would be the savior, so to speak. But we found that the blocker was often the amount of users that we would have dedicated to that. So we would cap it at store manager, so everyone in corporate down to store manager, and then you're reliant on the store manager cascading that information down. And I think in hindsight, that was a blocker. So something that we invested in to heighten the level of engagement and information flow is actually becoming the blocker. So by investing in a higher amount of users and taking that user amount down to employee level, we could be really clear in ensuring that the information flow was going to sales associate level, and seeing the engagement go up as a result, whether that was just company information, training, announcements, but it meant that they felt that they were part of something bigger. And whilst we value our store managers, undoubtedly there's going to be a natural dropout when they have to cascade that information down.
It's like the game of telephone almost, right? Like if you don't get it all the way to the end, you're waiting on or you're hoping that someone takes that message and carries it. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's super interesting. So let's take a shift. We've got a few minutes left. AI was chatted about a session or two ago. I think it was the last one. And it's been talked about at everything I've been in the last, 18 months. It's all anybody wants to talk about. So I think you either fall into one of two camps. You're either in the camp of can't wait to talk about it or the camp of tired of talking about it. I fall a little more into the tired of talking about it camp. But from the retailers we talk about, and when you think of in-store, AI has practical applications, of course, and generative AI and those sorts of things. When you think in-store, I always look at it as a challenging, like what are you doing with it in-store? Outside of just walk out, and maybe Arun, you can talk a little bit about what you look at from a grocery perspective, but we've tended to see it in conjunction with computer vision for things like inventory accuracy, location, replenishment, those sorts of things. So maybe with the 4 minutes we have left, we could just kind of go through the group and where do you see in the crystal ball the next 3 or 5 years, associate experience, customer experience, and store experience being affected by AI? If we want to start at the very end, Arun, if you want to.
I think the previous panel with Amazon, I think the gentleman addressed it, right? So for us, from the consumer experience, search, I think, how quickly can you provide relevant cues to consumers very, very quickly? And I'm talking about the digital shopping experience, right? So that has a huge application that we already see it. How could you, weave in personalization, recommendation based on large purchasing data, based on that particular consumer's transactions, and how do you make it intelligent, more relevant? I think that's the piece that at least, I'm most excited about. Outside of that customer experience for us is a lot about, again, forecasting. So again, for us, with AI, with better forecasting, if we can get to an on-shelf availability of 99%, so that's obviously translating into customer experience, right? So those are a couple of things that come to mind.
How about you, Vinay?
On AI, I have a slightly different view. It might be controversial, but Joe mentioned we are retailers and we've got to go back to the fundamentals, right? So if you go back to the fundamentals of AI, it's not new. It's been there since 1960s, right? If we had the conversation about AI 2 years ago, we all would have said we do AI. Forecasting, buying, planning, merchandising, allocation, recommendations, we all used AI so far, right? So I think the nuance here is the hype and the expectation that's been set with ChatGPT, OpenAI, and large language model, right? So if I were to split that fundamentally into two areas, if AI was already there since 1960, and we all as retailers were using all these forecasting models, et cetera, till like 2 years ago. There were reasons why we weren't brilliant at it, right? And the reason why we weren't brilliant at it was because of the quality of the data, and we all went on the bandwagon of big data, but we didn't really come out of it very well because we have a lot of discrepancy in the data, issues with the data, cleansing, and using the data. I think we have gotten over that hump. I think my only call out would be don't lose the focus on it, because the real AI comes with the learnings that we get from the core data that we capture of transactions, of customer behavior, loyalty data, et cetera. The massive, mammoth amount of data that we have, we still are not really using it with the tools and technology that we have, right? Then we have the Gen AI or the large language models, the co-pilots and whatnot that we focus on. To your question about to gaze into the crystal ball and see where it is, I think there is potential. I'm consciously optimistic about it. There will definitely be productivity improvement, for example, that is going to come through. But what we see today is micro productivity, not the macro productivity, right? So till we get to the point where there is macro productivities that we can get out of and we see benefits, we do see, I think, across the retailers, we use recommendation engines, which runs some of the core AI model, plus also large language models, right? We all use Gen AI and large language model today to generate content. There are a few retailers that I know of who actually use Gen AI to generate the product images without actually having to take the pictures of the sofa or a T-shirt in a studio. That technology exists, but it's not very prevalent yet. And it's not very cost effective for, to your point about being a retailer and low margin, we have to be cost conscious. So till it hits the point where it's meeting that sweet spot of productivity improvement, married with the return on investment, and it's widely available, because I think the earlier panel also mentioned, right? We don't want to be spending a lot of time going and doing PhDs and research on large language models or AI, because we are retailers, we need to focus on delivering it. I can see a value, but I think it's coming, but it's slightly early in the day, is my view. Yeah, Vishal?
Yeah, interesting. Anything quickly to add, Michelle?
Yeah, 8 seconds left.
That's why I said quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
So my take is I will put my money on anything that moves the needle in terms of either customer acquisition or compliance, legal compliance, or making customer experience better, or making my enterprise efficient. Every product, SAP, Oracle, every product is going to come out with inbuilt AI in itself. So I want to ride on the capabilities of the product that I have already bought. And I'm fully in line with what Vinay just mentioned. We already have it. We just need to use it. Best of our capabilities. There is a hype, and there is basics. So get the basics right, and you'll see results. That's my take.
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, I think we're out of time. I want to thank the panelists. Thank all of you.
Thank you.